Hello people from YouTube, I'm Felipe Durante, a Brazilian engineer living in China, and I'm here, again, debunking all the propaganda against China.
Yes, that is a man stapling fake leaves to a tree. And yes, these are Chinese work crews rolling down fake leaves and fake camo netting over barren, destroyed mountains to make them look green and natural again. I know some environmentalists who would move mountains to save the environment, but
Man, this suit is not yours, right?
in China, why move mountains when you can simply paint them? I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of tired of getting my news from the same old sources. I mean, seriously, Clippy, no address, answer a couple of questions so they sign up. Link. When I saw in China the local, I guess, municipality or the local town painting the brown grass green. I'm talking on an industrial scale here. I was there and they had these...
People do that in the United States. They pay for it to paint their grass at home. But then probably it's okay, right? It's the United States.
workers and they pulled out their little sprayer guns and they had a truck and everything and they painted the grass green.
Wow.
It smelt of chemicals, it smelled disgusting, and I was really blown away.
It smells of chemicals because it's painting. Oh, and by the way, now I know these guys from South Africa and not from Australia, as I said on the last video. He was a teacher here for many years. The people told me that when he left China, he was crying when he crossed the border to Hong Kong. But even though he was here for 14 years, because the money is really good. Anyway, of course, it's chemicals, it's painting. What did you expect?
Really blown away. I was like thinking to myself, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. Usually,
again, they do it in the US. So.
If grass is not green and it's brown, well, it means that it's not getting enough water, maybe not enough sunshine, maybe not enough nutrients or fertilizer, the soil's bad. Why would anyone spray paint the grass green? Now, before...
Because it's cheaper. It's cheaper than buying new grass. That's the point. I'm not saying I agree with that, but that's the reason.
Before anyone jumps down my throat saying that, oh, this happens elsewhere in the world, yes.
So, already.
During research for this video, I of course figured out that many places paint the grass green. I'm talking about golf courses, places like Disneyland.
Yeah.
If they've got a brown patch, they've got a special kind of a grass paint, for lack of a better word. It's supposed to be a kind of an organic dye that doesn't damage the grass itself, but it makes it green.
So
in California during drought times, they've got companies that can come paint your lawn for you. I understand that this is not a new thing, and it makes sense because China would have had to get the idea from somewhere.
Right? I knew it. I was waiting for the racism, xenophobic comment. China, since 2020, 2021, is the country that creates most patents in the world. But there is still this kind of people saying China has to copy things from someone else.
The difference is that in China, they're not using organic dyes or some kind of nutrient. They're using oil paint and spray paint and things like that. And it's not just the grass that they're painting. They paint trees. They paint mountains. Well, pretty much anything. They paint rocks in a quarry. And I have to explain to you why this happens. It's not like all of a sudden China's decided that green is a better aesthetic for their mountain rock faces or something like that. And I'll tell you the first time I remember really finding out about this phenomenon. And that was around about 2007. I remember reading in the news in China because you know what?
So you're talking about something from 15 years ago. Like really. As if this is happening right now.
Chinese news used to be a lot more capable.
Actually, I should make videos saying bad stuff about China. Pay me better. More views on YouTube.
Of actually criticizing some of the bad moves of the government or the local governments back in the day. Of course, that's impossible now. They may not criticize the government, but this was 2007, you know. Still the good years in China. So anyway, I remember reading in the news that in Yunnan there was a mountain that had been quarried for a number of years. Of course, it was a big eyesore. And there was a big directive from the central government at that time to start to enact these environmental programs. And usually how this works, this is always how it works in China, is the central government puts a directive. They're like, okay, now we have to care for the environment and we're going to give you monetary incentives. So in other words, if you can turn your local city into a green city or an environmentally, healthy city, you get some more cash from the local government, from the central government, that kind of thing. So what they decided in all their wisdom was, well, we can't make this look good because it's a barefaced quarry. It looks terrible. We've destroyed this mountain. It looks awful.
Yeah.
What we'll do is we'll just paint it green to make it look natural. And they spent a huge amount of money, something around...
There's stupid people everywhere, even in China. Like, really? 5 minutes of this video just they painted the mountain green. Like, really?
Along the lines of 500,000 RMB at the time, I remember because it was in the article. So that would have been about 60, 70,000 US dollars at the time to paint this, mountain green.
Yeah.
And the locals were like, what the hell's going on here? The locals even were a little perturbed by this whole thing. And they asked the people that were painting, they said, yeah, the local government has told us to do this. And there are photos of the paint they were using. They were just using oil paint. So they painted this entire mountain with oil paint, which is not very environmentally friendly.
It's not the best solution, yeah.
But it doesn't stop there. Mining companies and tourist areas around China started to do the same thing to improve the environment, because there was this mandate from the government. Hey, we have to be environmentally friendly. We have to rejuvenate the environment. So what do? Well, yeah, paint the rocks in your quarry green so that when the environmental inspectors come around or drive past, they think that there's lush greenery there and they're not going to question.
Again, he's talking about things that happened 15 years ago. And of course, this is stupid. As I said, there's stupid people everywhere. And there are stupid people in China who do stupid stuff. But China is the country that plants more trees in the world for I don't know how many years. Even the United States recognized that China did more in the last 7 years than the US did in the last 30 or 40 years regarding the environment. China today is the biggest, how do I say that? It's the biggest pollution country in the world. Polluted more today. But the thing is, United States, Canada, Australia, Europe, they've been polluting for over 200 years. And the pollution is accumulating. It's not like we are recycling and there's no more pollution from the Industrial Revolution. It's still here. So industrialization in China started 70, 60 years ago. And yes, China has to do better, like Brazil has to do better, the US has to do better. In fact, the US Army is the 4th or 5th biggest CO2 polluter in the world. Something like that. It's not an excuse, China has to do better, but they have been doing. China is the biggest in solar panels, wind power. I think also is the first in hydraulic power. What about the US? What about Europe? What about South Africa, your country?
Question the fact that you're just destroying the entire area. That's one example. Paint the mountains green in the scenic tourist area to make it look better and more appealing. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But now, of course, they've realized that using oil-based paints and spray paints on mountains is not a good idea. So why not just roll out, for lack of a better word, camo net? You see, there are rules and regulations in China. There are rules these days pretty strict about not destroying the environment. But rather than follow the rules...
Those nets are also to hold rocks, not only for the nice green view, but many of those nets are to hold small rocks that could fall and hit cars. And so you have to think about that.
Shortcuts are taken. In other words, rolling out this camo net on the quarry or the mountain that you've destroyed and stripped of all of its natural foliage and so on and so forth. Rather than following the rules and affecting your bottom line, just pay for some cheap camo netting that can be strewn over the cliff or over the mountain or the quarry. When your environmental efforts fail and your town is looking a bit ratty because all of the grass died or the trees are dead, well,
so much
staple leaves onto the trees, paint the grass green, and guess what? It looks like you've achieved your target. It looks...
See, it's 7 minutes. He just keep repeating the same videos and saying the same things, and he makes a lot of money on YouTube just saying bad stuff about China. This doesn't mean the whole country is like that. China is a big country. It's the fourth, I think, in the world. It has 1.4 billion people. Doesn't mean the whole country is like that.
Looks like you're doing good stuff for the environment. And the reason I'm even talking about this ridiculous practice in China, because it is ridiculous. Anyone who looks at this will say, seriously? Like, seriously? You're painting the grass and the trees green? You're stapling leaves to trees?
Same video.
You're painting your mountains green or rolling tarp or whatever, camo netting, camouflage netting over your mountains in order to make it look as if they're green? You got to be kidding me, right? This is stupid. This is ridiculous. But in China, that's how things are done. That's why you see these ridiculous numbers coming out of China when it comes to the COVID deaths, where they claim that only a
What's the relation? What's the relation between people painting grass and COVID?
small amount of people died from COVID. Of course, it's not true. The GDP number...
Of course it's not true, right? Of course. The guy's not even here. He's a China hater. Of course it's not true. I did 13 tests since 28th of September. 13. And what do they do if they find a positive case? They send to the hospital and they isolate the person, so the person will not contaminate anyone else. And they isolate the first contacts. That's what China does. The control here is very, very hard for COVID. It's strict. So it's easy for this guy to say, oh, it's just fake, because he's just a hater. He doesn't really know how things are done here in China because he's not here anymore.
GDP numbers that come out of China, these big mega projects that have got to do with green energy and technology and, you know, cloud-based internet and all that, 5G, you see these impressive numbers. You see these impressive facades. You see these flashy cities. You see this flashy infrastructure. But you know what? It's just like painting the grass and the trees and the mountains green.
While he's saying all this bullshit, China is testing 6G. But yeah, of course, right, it's fake. China GDP numbers can be corroborated by other countries. Many of those things are proved by institutes in other countries. So it's not like China is the only one saying things without proof. There's data, a lot of data. And I like how these people, look, this is painting grass is very stupid as it is, but the China GDP and COVID numbers are also fake, like really?
It's put out there so that people think it's one thing, where in fact it simply isn't true.
Sure.
It is a harsh reality. And something that I've witnessed with my own eyes, the irreparable damage that has been done to the environment in China, within the borders of China.
Many are from South Africa, like really? And you want to criticize China for destroying the environment, really?
Whether this has just been through exploitative logging, mining, you know, factory runoff, poisoning of the ground and the water. In fact, you cannot drink the water in China. It's all contaminated. The soil is mostly contaminated. It's a very bad situation as far as the environment's concerned. The lack of wildlife, the devastation that was wreaked on China.
The lack of wildlife. From the grass green, is talking about the lack of wildlife. And the data comes from his butt probably, because there's no data. It's just a lot of things in there: GDP, green grass, COVID, wildlife, and
it's a big deal. And unfortunately, spraying chemicals onto grass and spraying and painting oil paints onto the mountains and whatever else is not going to help nature recover. What China needs is, it needs a little bit of honesty. It really does. It needs the local governments to actually just sit back and admit that they have a problem and learn how.
Of course, the white man from Africa wants to tell the Asians what to do, right? Of course. China needs the white savior to come here and tell the Chinese people how to manage their country. Just because you lived here 14 years and you left as a hater.
Learn how to deal with it properly. Not always take shortcuts, not always try to cover things up, not always be about face. But I don't see this changing anytime soon, unfortunately. I just, once again, want to use this whole painting the grass and the mountains and the trees and whatever else green as a warning and a little bit of insight into how the Chinese government works. When you see these glistening propaganda videos coming out of China, and it doesn't matter what topic they're covering, whether it's an infrastructure thing or a raising the people out of poverty thing or a investment thing or whatever, remember.
By the way, the raising out of poverty is not a data from China. It's a data from the World Bank. From outside of China. They said China raised 800 million people out of poverty, not China. China, of course, confirmed the numbers, but they said that.
It's just a shortcut. It is just a face job. It is just them painting the grass green.
Ay, ay.